Okay. Last night in The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon, you might have seen this, he learned to fly. Apparently, they're about to do a live-action version of Peter Pan the first week in December on NBC. And last night on The Tonight Show, the actor who was playing Peter Pan, the actress Allison Williams, she went on The Tonight Show and she hooked Jimmy Fallon into the Peter Pan flying harness, kind of hooked him in delicately. It's a delicate operation. And then they hoisted him up into the air, and so he got to fly. Jimmy Fallon took over The Tonight Show about 10 months ago, and with him as the host, The Tonight Show has become this very unpredictable show. It's sort of more like an old-school variety show with singing and dancing and flying and skits and gymnastics. It's great, right? It's a lot of fun. And it reminds you that these shows are very much driven by and a reflection of who the host is. I mean, Jimmy Fallon making, crotch jokes about his harness and putting on a Peter Pan hat and flying around. That could really only be done by Jimmy Fallon. The host he took over from at The Tonight Show, Jay Leno, his style was 180 degrees different than Jimmy Fallon's style. Jay Leno's style was basically like unflappability, calmness. A calm, down-to-earth everyman in which a lot of the joke with Jay Leno was about him not getting too riled up about anything, about him being a middle-of-the-road, reasonable guy, not being surprised. He's a man who never expressed shock. And that is why, on the rare occasions when Mr. Mellow, Mr. Centrist Jay Leno talked about politics, whatever he said about politics on The Tonight Show would reverberate just for that reason. It would have an impact because you didn't really expect him to care all that much about what was going on in the day-to-day back and forth of politics. It wasn't really something that he would get excited about. And so when he did get excited about something in politics, or when he did even just point something out in politics as remarkable to unflappable him, people would notice, and it would sometimes have a political impact. And just after the last election, just after the 2012 election, Jay Leno at one point made a point of talking to Newt Gingrich about something that happened in the election, and he brought up this thing.
Tell me if this is a problem. Here are the GOP committee chairs. Show that picture. Everyone is a middle-aged white guy. Okay, is there a diversity problem in the Republican Party?
The fact is that picture is by definition not helpful.
This was the last election. This was 2012. In the 2012 election, you will recall, Republicans got beat. They lost the White House. Mitt Romney didn't beat President Obama. They also lost seats in the House. They didn't lose so many seats in the House, though, that they lost their majority. John Boehner stayed Speaker of the House after 2012. And as Speaker, since they were still in the majority, they got to pick their committee chairs. And when it came time to pick their committee chairs, which is really sort of the only job worth having in Congress. It's the only way you actually do anything of importance in Congress is to chair a committee. When it came time to give out those plum jobs, the Republicans in the House in 2012, they looked around at their 19 committee chairs that they had to fill, and they filled those 19 committee chairs with 19 guys. They even had to throw over some of their own Republican women in order to make sure they would have that all-male cast. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen from Florida, she had been chair of Foreign Affairs. They threw her out so they could put this guy in charge instead. On the Homeland Security Committee, a congresswoman named Candace Miller, she lobbied openly and aggressively to get promoted from just being a member of Homeland Security to instead being chair of Homeland Security. She let it be known that she wanted that chair. But instead they decided to give it to this guy. So their initial announcement from the last election was 19 chairs, 19 guys to fill those 19 chairs. Now, I should point out, one of them, Darrell Issa, is apparently half Lebanese. But other than that, I should mention that in addition to being 19 guys, they are all white guys. So after they made that initial announcement about what they were doing with their leadership after the 2012 election, they were a little bit embarrassed, I think, about even people like Jay Leno, unflappable Jay Leno, criticizing them over what they'd done. And so they realized that they had to try to do something with what they had left to allocate in terms of good jobs and leadership jobs. They still did have 2 chairmanships that they had to fill. There were these last 2 committees that had open chairmanships after that initial embarrassing announcement. They still had chairs to fill on the House Administration Committee and the Committee on Ethics. So after picking 19 guys. If Speaker Boehner wanted to remedy that sort of embarrassing appearance, 19 of 19, what Newt Gingrich called this unhelpful picture, if John Boehner was going to pick a woman, what he had to do was find a woman from one of those two committees. Pick any woman from among the membership of those two remaining committees, you got yourself a female chair. Well, this at the time was the Republican membership of those two committees. This was what John Boehner had to choose from. These were all the women that John Boehner had to choose from on those two committees. Tough choice. Which of these gals is it going to be? Well, John Boehner came up with a solution. Remember Candace Miller, who had been on Homeland Security and who wanted to be chair of that incredibly powerful, incredibly high-profile, serious committee, Homeland Security? Well, they said no to her for Homeland Security. Plainly, she can't run something like Homeland Security. Instead, they moved her over. They put her on a new committee she had never been on before, and then appointed her chair of that committee. And the committee they picked for her was the House Committee on Administration, which is responsible for not like monitoring the Obama administration or something. They don't mean administration that way. They literally make that committee so it can be responsible for the administrative tasks of running the House of Representatives as a workplace. So she's in charge of the cafeteria and the bathrooms. Administration, seriously, that's what they felt comfortable allowing a woman to be in charge of, but nothing else. And they had to bend over backwards and scramble to do that. So that was the last election. That was 2012. Now we've just had another election, 2014. The House is still controlled by the Republicans. They greatly increased their majority. They now get to name all of their committee chairs again, keeping in mind what happened last time. But tonight, they made their announcement. They announced 17 new committee chairs tonight. Behold, life's rich pageant of Republican leadership in Washington. It's like a Benetton ad, isn't it? Now, lest you think this is not a diverse group they just announced tonight is going to be running things in Washington from here on out, let me point out that this new list of who the Republicans are putting in charge includes both a Mike and a Michael, as well as a Mac. They've also decided to pick both a Bob and a Rob this time. You guys, there's even a Lamar. A Lamar, yeah. Republicans also announced today that they held over 4 committee chairs who got to keep their old jobs from the last Congress. So it's 3 committee chairmen and 1 committee chairwoman. They've allowed Candace Miller to stay in charge of the bathrooms and the cafeteria. And so, yeah, this is your Republican Party in Washington in all its glory. It should be noted, this is the cross-section of America they're offering to the American people now that they've taken power. Now, as I noted earlier, Darrell Issa is half Lebanese, and he did used to be a committee chair. He's not a committee chair anymore with what they announced tonight, so that diversity issue with Darrell Issa, that's taken care of. They've decided to go with a simpler look, more consistent, more sort of homogenous, single thing. Now, in the Senate, the Republicans have announced their top leadership there, just the top leadership. It's 3 Johns, a Mitch, and a Roy. You put them all together with what we've got so far from the House, and this is what they've decided to do in terms of who's going to be in charge. I tried for a long time to come up with some sort of analogy for what else in life these days is a group of 25 white men and 1 white woman who's been put in charge of the kitchen part. But I don't think there is an analogous thing like that anymore in America. I mean, not since they let Condoleezza Rice into Augusta. I mean, this may change when in the Senate they announce who's going to be in charge of committees there, but this is what they've got right now. Wow. The Republicans don't take control of the Senate until January. They can announce committee chairs whenever they want to, so we shall see when they do that. Amazingly, though, tonight, even though the Republicans haven't yet taken over the Senate, the Democrats use the fact that they still control the Senate to tonight call a vote on the floor of the Senate to authorize the Keystone Oil Pipeline to bring Canadian tar sands oil all the way across the United States from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. This is a decision the Democrats made to hold this vote tonight. The Democrats are controlled. The Democrats can spend this lame duck period in the Senate however they want. They decided to spend it voting on the Keystone Pipeline. And the vote to authorize the Keystone Pipeline fell short by 1 vote tonight in the Senate. Now, What happens next here on this issue is a foregone conclusion. The Republicans will take control of the Senate in January. The number of Democrats in the Senate will drop by 8 or 9. The number of Republicans by that point will have increased by 8 or 9. That'll give Republicans a very comfortable margin to pass this thing that did not pass tonight. It has already passed in the House. They could pass it a million times over if they wanted to. But that means once the Senate votes, once both houses of Congress have passed this thing, it's going to go to President Obama's desk, where in all likelihood, President Obama will veto it. And so either way, the practical result is the same. The Keystone Pipeline is not going to get built. Or at least it's not going to get built by Congress forcing it to be built in a way that end runs the State Department process, which is already underway. Democrats spent a good chunk of the last hours they will have any power in the Senate, any power in the Congress, doing this thing tonight because Mary Landrieu wanted them to do it. Mary Landrieu wanted to do it to try to save her own Senate seat in a runoff in Louisiana on December 6th. I should note that the Keystone Pipeline, this part of it that they're voting on tonight, has nothing to do with Louisiana. It won't run through Louisiana, will have precisely zero job impact in Louisiana, has nothing to do with her state. But she's decided maybe that's the way she's going to win. Maybe that's the theory, but regardless of what had happened with this vote tonight, it is likely that Mary Landrieu is going to lose that runoff, no matter what. The Democratic Senate Campaign Committee already long ago pulled all of their money out of that race. The advertising that Louisiana voters are seeing in their home state right now ahead of that runoff is roughly running 96% for Mary Landrieu's opponent to 4% for Mary Landrieu. She is the last remaining statewide elected Democrat in Louisiana. The latest polling heading into that runoff shows she's losing by double digits. And it should be noted, she has the exact same position on Keystone that her opponent has anyway. The bill in the House to approve Keystone is named for the guy she's running against. It's Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy is the sponsor of it. So Mary Landrieu has been leading this vote in the Senate to approve Keystone, which actually would have meant her leading the fight to pass her opponent's bill. So it's hard to see why that would make people decide to vote for her and against her opponent. I mean, nothing is certain until it happens, but Mary Landrieu's going to lose anyway. The Keystone vote failed anyway. All Democrats did was burn up some of the last precious time they've got left to get anything done before they hand over complete control of Congress to the Republican Party. What on earth were they thinking, spending their time doing this? How is this even conceivably, by any stretch of the imagination, a constructive use of time by the Democrats, by the last precious seconds they have in which they can do anything? But it's what they did, to utterly predictable results of no practical or political consequence whatsoever, except to highlight an issue that their Republican opponents enjoy having highlighted, and to also put a spotlight on Democrats' inability to get something done for one of their own members. Woohoo! Was it fun for you too? Today, the top Democrat in the Senate, Harry Reid, spent some time talking about the stuff that they are not doing in the lame duck period because instead they wanted to do stuff like this inane Keystone vote. Harry Reid explained that one of the big things they could do, but they've decided not to do, is confirm President Obama's choice to replace Eric Holder as Attorney General of the United States. Loretta Lynch is the first African-American woman to be nominated for Attorney General ever in the history of our country. The Democrats clearly have enough votes to confirm her in the Senate if they wanted to, even if no Republicans sided with them. There are no substantive objections that have been raised to Loretta Lynch's nomination under current Senate rules. They can confirm her with a simple majority vote of 51 senators. Democrats have got that and change while they're still in control until January. But Harry Reid explained today that the White House and Senate Democrats agreed that they wouldn't prioritize that matter. They would not try to get that done while they still have the power to do it. So what's the thinking there? I mean, why do Keystone, which is like bad news, and oops news? Like, why spend your time doing Keystone and not do the Loretta Lynch vote? What's the thinking there? I mean, it's got to be either one of two things, right? Either they think there's no reason for Democrats to spend any time trying to confirm Loretta Lynch because, the Republicans will confirm her. Republicans won't have any problem with that. Just leave it to Mitch McConnell. One of the things Mitch McConnell is surely looking forward to when he's in control of the Senate is confirming a lot of really high-profile Obama nominees. Maybe? I mean, maybe they're thinking that, in which case I would love some of what they're smoking. Or conversely, maybe more strategically, more realistically, they're thinking that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans maybe are not going to want to confirm Loretta Lynch for Attorney General. Maybe they, in fact, are going to slow walk or outright oppose her nomination. They're going to find some way to demonize Loretta Lynch and drag her through the mud once they have the power to do so by controlling the timing, the hearings, and everything. Maybe the reason the Democrats don't mind that prospect is because they're thinking, oh, you know what? That would make Republicans look terrible. If that happened, Republicans would be rejecting the first black woman nominee to be Attorney General. And Republicans will not want to do that because they are very concerned about what black women think of them. They are very concerned with the face that they put forward to women and specifically to black people. Republicans know that appearances matter on these things. So Democrats can surely trust them to do the right thing, if only because there's no chance they'd want to be that embarrassed on issues of race and gender. Democrats, you are amazing. You have been astonishing for a long time, but right now, in this lame duck period, you are astonishing. Now roll over and play dead.